Hi, everybody. How is everybody enjoying MAGFest so far? See, that's actually pretty good. I was going to be disappointed, but they did a good job, so I'm not going to be disappointed anymore. So, hi, everybody. My name is Sean. I will be your host for the evening. I work at Yahoo, as well as many of my compatriots here. We're here to talk about when it's not all fun and games, privacy and security for gamers. We'll do introductions, then we'll dive right in. I run the Digital Forensics and Incident Response Department. Basically, we stop bad guys who are trying to get after data. It's kind of fun. I podcast, I do a little audio stuff. Obviously, here at MAGFest, like I game, I love cartoons, all that kind of stuff. I am far less important than all of these people. They're the smart ones, so I'm going to go right down the line.
Hey, how's it going? My name's Alan. I currently work as the technical lead for Triage, Bug Bounty at Yahoo, and basically that is a public program where anyone can come in, hack against our assets, and then submit a bug report to our program. And if it turns out to be a valid report that we go and fix, we'll pay out a bounty and they'll get reputation. It's kind of like a gamified security system.
So you basically get money to break shit, which is super fun. Nathaniel?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm Nathaniel Davis. I'm a senior security engineer for Yahoo. My primary role is I am a threat investigator. So I end up with researching and digging into a lot of incidents and things that are going on inside the company network.
And I'm Pinguino Cobb. I basically do artwork for hackers, and you might have seen me around other conventions doing press photography.
I'm Anj Naji. I'm a security engineer on the vulnerability management team at Yahoo. I basically hunt down viruses and I make sure they go away.
Okay, so like here's the deal. I gotta have a little heart-to-heart with this room before we dive into it. I'm like 4 days back from the Bahamas, so I am not at all prepared for this. I'm really hoping that they are.
It's all your fault.
It's always my fault. With that said, we have this really nice opener that I was supposed to deliver, but since I did none of the work for it, I've decided that I'm not going to deliver it. I'm going to let Nathaniel do it because he actually did the work.
Okay, I can do that one. All right. So, where is this? Anybody know?
Anybody want to take a guess?
England? No, it is not, but close continent. So, this was a challenge that was issued on Twitter as part of a geolocation open source intelligence challenge. It was posted at about, I think the timestamp's on there, I believe it's 12:59 a.m. Back in February. There was a response to this. If you'll go to the next slide.
Yes, I will.
3 minutes later, somebody nailed the city. It gives you an idea of how quickly just an image can be turned into a location. Now, that was Coper. So 3 minutes. Now, within the next hour, another 3 people had it, including that long. Another location that's actually talking about how it's a very lovely complex. And then you even have somebody else who managed to find another image on Google Street View, posted it with descriptions of some of the services that are available. Now, these were people that were doing it early in the morning and doing it for fun. Imagine what happens when they're trying to do it for either malicious reasons or for profit.
Now, bear in mind, we're not saying all this to scare the shit out of anybody. Like, that is not the goal. Like, all of us understand that we live in an online society. People share. People want to share. They want to connect in different ways. Our goal today is to put up, like, this reality, because it's kind of shocking, right? And then really take a chance to talk through what you can do while still maintaining, like, the fun and the freedom and all the things that you want to do on the internet, but maybe just keeping yourself a little bit in a better position. Like, that's the goal of what we're here for. So we really want to start with securing yourself. And I'm going to toss it off to Anj first as we talk about what limiting your online presence looks like to make OSINT harder. There will be a couple more slides as we go through, but basically if you don't need to see it, like, we didn't put it up, so like we'll just talk.
All right, I'm just going to go over some basic things you can do to protect yourself online. I know everyone uses social media. No problem doing that. But think about what you're posting. So in this example here, the person posted just a picture, no context online. Think about your surroundings. People can pick out different things in the surroundings to figure out where you are. If you're not trying to share your location, think about that. Another thing you can do is check-in features on the social media platforms. Just don't use them. If you want to use them, make sure that it only shares to your friends. That way, random people aren't trying to find you.
So I'm gonna chime in here for a story, and I'm not gonna name the app or anything like that. And you probably know the story that I'm gonna tell. So there's a popular drink sharing app where you can go somewhere and you can say, hey, like I had a beer at this place. And I had a beer at this place. And you can set that to private, just your friends, or you can set it to a bunch of other people. One of our friends took on a project just out of curiosity to see how much he could figure out just from what people were sharing of where they were drinking. Not only can you figure out like the general neighborhood that they live in, he could figure out when they were at airport bars and sharing there and traveling, where they traveled to, when they were coming home, where they were, so on and so forth. So like the check-in apps, to Anja's point, like restricting those down can be super duper valuable because it's information that most people don't think about in any way, shape, or form as being valuable, but it can be used to be like super valuable for figuring out all kinds of stuff about you.
Another additional thing in a gaming context, for instance, I play Overwatch. I'm not sharing my real name online in the context that I don't want it to be shared. So avoid doing things like that. These are all just really basic things that anyone can do.
Doesn't Overwatch now require you to use like your real phone number and also like is able to leak your IP address now as well?
It did. You don't have to share your phone number any longer. It did the first 2 weeks of Overwatch 2. Yeah.
Anybody else want to chime in on this?
I want to throw one thing out there. So we used OSINT. So that is open source intelligence, just so make sure that the acronym has been spelled out. The primary purpose on that one is just any sort of information you can gather about a person from open sources. So social media, anywhere out on the internet, just things that's freely available, open to anyone. So this can be collected by anyone, anywhere really.
Cool. So with that, we'll talk about being more aware of what you're sharing in real time, not just the overall limit of kind of what you're sharing, but being aware of how you're sharing in real time. Alan?
So I guess when you're out on the internet sharing stuff or around other people doing some kind of thing, you kind of want to think from the perspective of the attacker. What would they be able to gain from what they can see, or what they can infer from what I'm sharing, whether that's through an image, through a stream, through text. An attacker is going to be thinking, how can I use this to my advantage? How can I use this information? So, for example, like if you're sharing a picture on social media or something, say of like the background of what's behind you, like at work or in your gaming environment, people can pick out certain information that could be used against you, such as like your hobbies or your interests, and that can be turned into something like a password attack or social engineering, where they could use that targeted information against you to gain better leverage.
So on that, we actually have a really fun challenge for everybody, kind of very much in line with the first challenge. So we're going to take a curation, and then Nathaniel will talk through this.
Yep.
What do you see in this picture? What do you see that is interesting or could be particularly interesting or concerning? Please, if anybody just wants to yell it out, go ahead.
Something out the window. I can't really see it from back here, but it almost kind of looks like maybe water or something out the window.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Please make sure to repeat for the speaker.
There is somebody said there is something potentially water or something outside the window, and they can see outside the window. Anybody else?
It just looks like at the very least an upper class living scenario going on. They're clearly not like
Upper class living scenario.
The way the light's moving into the room.
The way the light's moving into the room. Same.
yeah, time it.
You could time it. Cool. Anybody else?
They don't have children.
They don't have children. There we go.
Nice.
Very good.
It would be much, much messier if they did. I have one.
I heard somebody say an open laptop earlier. What else you got?
Please, go ahead.
They probably have a maid.
Potentially.
Okay, potentially made. A home office, okay.
Books on the shelf call it the language, which might indicate country.
Okay, books on the shelf, good.
Good idea. In the back.
Way in the back.
I went up the post-it note on the window with a password or something.
Not on the window, but there could be on the desk. All right, I'm gonna hand it to Nathaniel. He'll walk through.
So, a couple of you called out along the image out the window. So this image that I grabbed for this challenge specifically was a stock photo. And so I grabbed a stock photo and figured out we could take a look at it. If you look out that window, what you're seeing out the window is Philadelphia. So this location was actually across the river in Camden, New Jersey, and you were seeing this Philadelphia city skyline out that window. Now, you also mentioned the books. Who mentioned the books? Fantastic idea, because one of the things you can see in there is you can actually see some of their interest. And as I was in the high-res image of this, you can tell that there are multiple copies of a few different books, and so obviously very popular. Also, you know that this is a staged environment from that. But you've got things like Tolstoy and a few other eclectic works. Also, you have Java for web pages as one of the books that's in there. So you have a very well-read person. Also, you've got somebody that's most likely a web dev looking at a lot of the environment in there. Somebody mentioned light and shadows that are coming through in there. You can also use that. There was a clock on the desk that is showing the time of approximately 10:15, most likely from that shadows, probably in the afternoon, actually in the morning on that one. So a couple of different things that you can draw on. And then I pulled out the artwork specifically, because how many times have you been in a meeting or seen pictures online where somebody has their degree in their background? Anybody seen that before?
Yeah.
So if you post that and it's a very high-res image, you can get the school that the person went to, you can get their major, you can get probably graduating class. And then if they graduated with honors, then you got some additional information. But if I wanted to impersonate somebody and pretend that, or use it as a pretext to gather information in an attempt to identify some information about you that I could use to get your passwords or anything along those lines, I could pretend to be a classmate. I could pretend to be interested in that location that you live in. I could pretend to be interested in the topics that you have. As far as your books. There's so many different things that are revealed in just a simple photo like this. And the reason I grabbed the stock photo is I did not want to openly dox anybody that I had just found randomly. And so this was something that was open source stock, available for anybody to grab, download, and then this is what I pulled off in approximately an hour worth of reviewing on this photo. So it took me an hour to do it, and I'm not that good.
He's really not, trust me. So, and the important thing to remember, folks, is like we're not saying don't stream. We're not saying don't anything like that. I've been in InfoSec for 15 years. I spent 7 years streaming for a completely different thing that had nothing to do with my job. And in those 7 years, I kept those two worlds completely separate. There's not a single person from that world that I didn't tell who knew what I did for a living in real life. I made up a whole bunch of stories. We turned it into gags. We did the whole thing. But I didn't have anything in my background that alluded to what I did in real life. No degrees, no nothing like that. I have a lot of my nerdy interests in my background, but nothing that is identifying to me in a way that could give up information that I didn't want given up at the time. So what we're basically encouraging everybody for is when you think about these things, there's a term that we use in our industry called a threat profile. And we're going to talk more about threat profiles throughout this whole thing. But understanding your threat profile is really important. Understanding who might want to attack you, what they might want to do, what information you have that is valuable, and then how to protect that information. And that includes down to things like the quality of your background or what is in your background and what kind of information that gives off. Anybody else want to chime in here?
One thing I see people posting a lot of in their backgrounds is keys when they move into a new apartment, and I freaking hate that because you can actually make copies of it. You can 3D print them and get into people's houses just from a photo.
Go ahead, please.
Not sure if it's something you guys will bring up, but something that should be included in your threat profile is stuff like the services and programs that you use. So, if you want to protect yourself from a government entity or a corporation, you should probably stay away from services like Meta services, stay away from Google, stay away from Apple, because those are all data harvesting farms that are selling you off to advertisers. You want to stay away from those kinds of things.
Oh, absolutely. So what was said so that it's on stream is one of the things that a lot of people need to consider and weigh in a threat profile is if they want to stay from advertisers or corporate interests or something, they might want to stay away from things like Meta or Google, data harvesters. And many people, honestly, myself included, make the conscious decision that it's the internet. So like somewhere somebody's going to harvest my data. So I use the services that are convenient to me within like my ethical stance. But that's not everybody. Like there are a bunch of private email services you could use and all kinds of different private services if you want to stay away from ad tracking platforms. So one of the kind of most interesting things about threat profiles, and one of the things that frankly only one of us up here is actually qualified to talk about, is how much different it is from a threat profile perspective for men versus women. Like they have a completely different threat profile. And we're not qualified for that except for Pinguino. So we're going to let her talk about that.
So one of the things you really need to worry about online is harassment and stalking. And I think that's just more common for women on the internet. Some of the things that you can do to do that is just make it harder for yourself to find on the internet. Use different email addresses for different services that you're signing up for. Because if you Google somebody, that's one of the easiest ways to kind of breadcrumb your way through finding more information about that person. One of the things that I do, since I'm a fairly public person, I use social media all the time. I don't stream, but I'm still in that category of being open and being at cons and stuff. My name is really hard to disguise, right? There's only one of me. But you can look at somebody's username and usually tell like sometimes their birth date or birth year, right? Because they might put a bunch of numbers after their name. They might use their real name. And if you're trying to make yourself like more like harder to find on the internet, you don't want to do stuff like that. I use Google Voice and I print it on a business card, so I have a phone number to give out to people. So people think they have my phone number, but it's really like a decoy number that I kind of check once in a while. I also use a PO box that looks like a real address, so companies think I'm signing up with a real address, but finding out where I live is a lot harder. And then for things like being at cons, being out in public spaces, and even doing things like running communities online, you want to have a trusted circle of friends, whether that's a set of Discord mods or Twitch mods that kind of watch your stream and make sure that everyone kind of behaves on there, or like at a con, people that kind of know where you are at all times. And that way they know if you're, not coming back from a party or something like that. So.
Thank you. And we're actually going to keep the mic with you for a little while. And we're going to talk about how you can be open in public, which you were just talking about,
yeah,
but still also super duper safe.
I mean, yeah, it's really the trusted circle of friends. It's your friends won't let anything bad happen to you. If someone that's possibly going to cause you harm is talking to you, you can't get out of a situation, your friends will kind of rescue you out of that. And you can, kind of work out signals to trade with your friends, right? So they know to rescue you.
Thank you. All right. And we're going to kind of pivot topics in a few minutes, but there's one more thing that's actually really helpful to talk about before we move on here. And that is third-party tools that can really help you if you want to figure out what your online profile is, figure out where you're at, figure out all these different things. So I'm going to toss it over to Anj over here to talk about how you can, what tools you can use to really help you figure out what this online profile even looks like.
Sure. So the first tool, this is a paid service. It's Delete Me. You give it your email address, and they will look for any data harvesting services that have your email or your name, age, location, address in them, and then have that deleted from those services. I highly recommend this. They'll check your data once per quarter, so once every 90 days, and delete any information they can find. Another very useful tool is Have I Been Pwned? That one, you once again give it your email address, and it'll check back at on breaches that have occurred and see if any data came up with your information in them, which is also why for accounts that you have, always have different passwords. That way they can't just use the same password to hack into all of your accounts.
And for anybody kind of keeping track of this, we're going to have a whole slide later that's just going to have links to crap. So you can all just take a screen or say take a photo of it if you want.
So Anj, you mentioned Have I Been Pwned? So just one of the things you can do with Have I Been Pwned is you can enter your email address into that. and then they will send you an alert whenever they have detected your email out there. In fact, I got one 2 days ago about the Twitter breach that I just got reported. So I was included in that breach. I am one of 200 million. Yay me.
Oops.
This actually takes us into a really good topic and a good pivot into securing your account. So let's start with like, have I been pwned, and dive into that a little bit more, because it is like one of the most valuable free services on the damn internet.
It is amazing. I love that service.
I'm gonna actually give it to you, Nathaniel, to
Okay,
talk
that's
more about
fine.
that.
Yeah, I'll gladly talk about Have I Been Pwned. So there's a couple different options with that one, but the most beneficial for you as an individual user is just registering your email address with them. The guy that runs it has been doing this for a number of years, very trusted in the community. He does not do anything with your information except create a database, and he scrapes basically the dark web or any of these data dumps from any of these hacks that have happened, specifically looking for information, and then he will run his database or list of email addresses against the information that he's gotten from these web scrapes, and then send out a message saying, hey, we've identified this breach, you were included in this breach, this is what you need to be aware of. And it will give you a little bit of details about the breach, so you know where to go to, what to do, and what sort of issues and what information has been compromised. For larger corporations, they do have a paid service where you can actually get the full list for your domain and then run that entire thing. And then you as an administrator for that location can then go to your individual people and say, hey, this happened, you need to change these. So there's a lot of capability in that. There's a lot of information and a lot of good being done by this. And it's really a free service for you as an individual. So register your email with it, especially if it's one that you use in a lot of locations, just so that you are aware of what's happening and what information has been compromised about you.
And this is like the bad shit has already happened, right? Like something bad has happened, you should know about it. And that's super helpful. Like you can't always stop bad shit from happening. And to be frank, like you don't necessarily monitor or control what other companies do with what you give them. So like if they have a breach, your password could be part of it. Inside your account could be sensitive data. But I want to kind of roll backwards now because we've hit like the IR side, right? Like the bad shit happened. That is where I live. That is my life. I love that part of my job. But there's a lot that you can do before the bad shit happens that can really help you set yourself up for much greater success later. And I'm going to go to Pinguino for this because one of the biggest ones is multi-factor authentication and password managers.
So you've probably heard of multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication. It's like usually on your banking account or even Discord or Twitch, it's 2FA. And what that really means is something that you know, something that you have, and something that you are. And it could be something you know would be like a password, right? It's in your head, it's only you know it. Something you have could be like a device, like a phone that gives a token, usually using an app like Google Authenticator or Authy. And then something you are is biometrics, like it could be a retina scan or a fingerprint. Fingerprint's probably the most common thing you'll encounter. And so it means that if your password is compromised, then they need to do, they usually pair it with something like a code that you authenticate with, and they can't get into your account as easily. People use password managers to be able to track, like you probably have 100 different accounts on different services, right? And you're never going to remember like every single password for that. So they use apps called password managers like Bitwarden and 1Password, and they live on your phone or your computer. Sometimes they're synced together, and they let you store secret information, right? The other thing these password managers usually do is they let you, they have a generator that let you type in what requirements that website might have to make a secure password, and you can set to how many characters you want, and then you're always going to have like a really good password for each site. And I think that's something that most people don't do in practice, and they really should, because it really helps keep you safe, and it's like one of the most important things you can do.
So let's roll back to like, have I been pwned for a second, right? Your Twitter breach. We'll use that as an example, right? 200,000, 200 million? 200 million accounts, Twitter breach. Passwords out the door. Let's say passwords are out the door.
I don't know if the passwords actually got compromised on that.
They might not have, but for the sake of argument, breach happens, password out the door.
Yes.
You get a thing from Have I Been Pwned says, hey, you're part of the Twitter breach. okay, cool, I'm going to go reset my Twitter password. But I just use that password for my bank account, and I use that password for my Facebook, and I use that password for my Twitch, and I use that password for whatever other service that you want. You might not think about that. So like using a password manager lets you like extrapolate out different passwords for everything and not know your own passwords, which I don't know any of mine. And we have a hand up.
I was going to say, use the password manager. If that password manager had a breach, then wouldn't all of your passwords be out there?
Okay, so if a password manager has a breach, wouldn't all of your passwords be out there? I guess that means we have to talk about the LastPass in the room. We kind of left it out there for a reason. That being said, like, let me say this first off. If it's the difference between using a password manager and not, use a damn password manager.
Yeah.
Even with the risks associated with them, use it. Here's the thing about the LastPass breach. As far as what anybody knows, as far as what's been publicly revealed, right? The way they do their stuff, them getting breached, they can't get your master password. They can get like your email, they can get your phone number. They might even be able to get a little bit of information about what accounts you use LastPass for. They can't get your master password to get into your wallet, and they can't get into your wallet. LastPass doesn't have access to your wallet. Only you have access to your wallet, and almost every password manager is set up that way. So you might be at an increased risk of phishing. Phishing, for anybody who doesn't know, is like a social engineering based attack through email that says, hey, like, we're from LastPass, like, go give us your password. Because they might have that information, but your passwords are still pretty good. As far as we know, your passwords are still pretty good. Please.
A comment on what he said. If you don't trust that like big corporations will have it out for you and notifying you right away if you do get breached, there are locally stored options. Like even Bitwarden itself has an open source standard through the form of something called Vault Order, which is something I use personally, and it makes it so you can store all the data either locally on your devices or if you have like a home server you can use. So that way, the chances of you being affected by a breach are way smaller because who's going to know that you have a small personal home server that you store your passwords on, because who does that?
So he brought up that there are password managers, and it's absolutely true. There are locally indexed password managers. 1Password used to work like that unless you shared it, and you still can use 1Password local only, or you can use cloud version and then share it across all your accounts. And personally, I like security, but I also like simplicity. So I want to access my accounts from my phone and from my computer and from my other phone. So like I'm all about the cloud solution there, and I'll accept that risk. That's part of my personal threat profile, though, to go back to that one.
Yes. And that's part of the trade-off. That's what a lot of this is. It's the trade-off between usability and security. And so you have to identify where is your personal preference between usability and security. Understanding that more usable sometimes means more vulnerable. More secure means less usable. It's that spectrum. You got to work on that line.
And we actually kind of glanced off these a little bit, but I'm going to give it to Alan because he's been quiet for a while, and that worries me. To talk a little bit about how auxiliary breaches can really affect like gaming on your gaming accounts, can affect your personal accounts, as well as just to dive a little bit more into passwords, because we talk about password managers and the value there, but let's talk about passwords and why that's important too. So take it away.
Sure. So I guess to tie both of those together as far as like passwords and auxiliary breaches. So say you're using the same password across a bunch of different accounts or slightly different variations. Your account gets breached in one area or some way. An attacker can take that information, use it to figure out additional information, such as if they breach your email or something like that that contains social types of comments like, oh, I play this game or I go to these sites. They could go attack those sites with the same information that's already disclosed, like your username and password, and likely breach multiple different sites that you're using if they're all the shared password. Let me think. As far as like if you're generating like passwords for yourself, you don't want to, I guess I'll just tell you how like hackers are like cracking your passwords and stuff. So for the most part, you can take a dictionary of words, guess through that really quickly, add on some different variations like numbers, symbols, spaces. So when you're creating a password, you don't really want to use words that are public knowledge. You kind of either want to create your own kind of word, do something like phonetically where it's not going to be something that's going to show up in public. That helps against dictionary attacks. You also want to have like a decent amount of length too. I think they recently put out like the 4090 GPUs can crack like 8-character passwords like nearly instantaneously or something like that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they're incredibly fast.
So have a long password. Don't use the same passwords. Definitely use a password manager, and be aware that if you're breached in one area, that information can also be used to attack you in different areas.
So like here's the deal, right? You really have two options on the table when it comes to password stuff. You can create very long, very complicated, unrelated to your life passwords with a bunch of special characters and numbers and remember all of those things. Or you can stop being stubborn and use a password manager and let it do it for you. That's like really the easy solution. We do struggle occasionally with people who are just so stubborn. They're like, no, it's cool. I'll just remember all of my passwords.
It's a lot easier to remember just one password for your password manager.
Just use a password manager, please.
Yeah, like that's like as simple as it goes. And then as we kind of loop back into the MFA side for a minute, because I want to do that too. MFA kind of comes in two varieties, right? Like as Pinguino said, there's digital MFA where you'll get like a token. You can download apps like Duo, Google Authenticator, all that to your phone. There are also things like YubiKeys. YubiKeys are physical tokens. They're really wonderful. You touch them and it logs you in. And no one can log in unless they touch that specific device. It's kind of amazing. It works similar to like how like if you have an iPhone and it does like Face ID or Touch ID. It's the same kind of thing that a YubiKey can bring to pieces of technology that don't have those. They're relatively affordable and it's just super easy to log into whatever you want to with them. So you have multiple types of MFA. And I'm going to give it back to Pinguino to talk a little bit about like how to set up MFA on some popular services that we thought would probably be really accurate here for MAGFest.
Yeah, I figured some of you guys run Discord rooms. I've been modding for the past couple years.
I had them in the wrong order. I'll do Discord first.
Oh, sorry.
I told you I'm not prepared.
But the first thing I tell anybody that's new to Discord is when they join one of my groups to go into settings, turn off DMs from the group, especially if you're like in a crypto Discord, because then you're targeted for phishing like super hardcore. And the second thing that I have them do is turn on two-factor authentication or MFA. And so those are basically the screens in the settings on where to find it. It's super simple. It takes like 10 seconds to do and will make your life way like safer, less annoying. And then if you're a mod, the other thing to think about is be careful about what third-party plugins you're installing, because especially with the crypto apps, like I've seen them drain people's wallets because the people running the apps are just programmers doing it in their spare time, right? They're not really super vetted. You can lower the risk profile for that by checking to see how many people have downloaded this plugin and when the last time it was updated. And that kind of goes for like any website plugin or anything you added as a service on the internet. And then if you go to Twitch screen, this is where to do 2FA on Twitch, which is kind of the same thing. You're just adding a layer of protection for your account. And you've like at that point put so much time and energy into your account, you don't want someone to take that from you.
Exactly. So with that being said, we've kind of reached the end of our set of questions, but we kind of wanted to do that pretty quickly because what we have is we have 4 really exceptional security people and 1 person who talks for a living a lot. That's me. So we really want to know like what questions do any of you have around like how you can better protect yourself in any situation that you have. And I already see a hand up. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to unhook this microphone. I'm going to walk down there, and if people want to like come up and ask the questions, like I'll hand you the microphone. If you don't, you can still shout them, and then I'll just say them. But that might be easier.
Don't fall. We'd all laugh.
I know. I would laugh too, honestly. All right. So who has a question? Please.
Okay, so mine isn't a question, but I did want to add on to the whole thing about the plugins. Should I repeat what I said, or just keep it? Okay. So, like I said, mine thing is not a question, but it's something I wanted to add on to about the thing about what you said about their plugins being developed by people in their spare time. I wanted to add that Something that isn't a silver bullet, but is a nice thing to look out for is when you're looking for different programs and plugins to use and things like Discord and whatnot, is to check and see if they're open source, if the developer made it so anybody could look at the code and make sure that you're not able, or they aren't able to push an update that will screw you over and steal your information out of the blue. Because it's open source, anyone would be able to read the code right there and see if they pushed like some kind of token grabber or something. And like I said, it's not a silver bullet because there are smaller devs that their stuff doesn't get audited, but I feel like for a lot of bigger stuff, looking for that would be helpful.
I actually really like bigger open source projects because it means more eyeballs are looking at it.
It does, but it also brings up something that we negated to talk about a little bit.
Yes, we did.
And that is, there's another really good, really free tool that can be super helpful for you in every part of your life. And that tool is called VirusTotal. Has anybody heard of VirusTotal before? Okay, we got a couple. Literally, you can go to VirusTotal, you can upload anything that you get, PDF, document, executable, any type of email attachment, website URLs, anything you want, upload it, it'll scan it across like 50 different antivirus engines and like tell you if it is bad or if it thinks it's bad or if it has ever been found to be bad. So you can basically go check any application or anything that you get to see if there's potentially something wrong with it. And that's a super useful way to help protect yourself, because we didn't really talk about the like what happens when your computer gets hacked, which sucks.
It's called what again?
VirusTotal.
All right.
What if someone you knew was a stupid child and like
get a little
just
closer.
accidentally? Oh right.
There you go.
Sorry.
Thank you.
And accidentally leaked all their information. How would you go about cleaning that up from like years ago?
Who wants to take that?
Delete me?
Yeah, so the service I mentioned earlier, Delete Me, it is a paid service, but you give it your email address and other information, and they will go online and go on many data harvesters and delete your information.
So one thing I do want to point out on that one, while Delete Me may be a paid service, most of these information aggregation sites that Delete Me will query, you can go to yourself and go through the effort of getting your information removed. Obviously, it's a trade-off of your time versus your money. And so you can pay Delete Me to go do it for you, or you can take the steps of going through all of them. The benefit of using one of this one, and obviously we're not sponsored by Delete Me or anything along those lines. We just really like it. But with that, they will regularly go back and double check, because a lot of these aggregation sites will sell their information to other sites. And so even though you may remove it from one location, it may get replicated again and end up back in that same spot.
It's all about knowing where it is, and the services that help you do that know that, and most people don't. By the way, just for the record, we are all stupid children, and like I have a 7-year-old, and I am terrified about the world that she's growing up in, because like the internet is a very different place than when I was a kid, and like she will be held to accountability for like everything she does from like 10 on. Neopets. Oh, I haven't heard that one in a while. That is gold. I loved Neopets. Come on up.
Just one thing to add on to that last question. If you're not able to delete your information for some reason, you can always go the route of diluting it to the point that it's not that specific.
Please.
Yeah, so earlier you said that you were going to put up a slide with all the links.
It's coming.
Okay.
At the very end, we will put that up. Actually, I guess we could switch over.
Yeah.
Just click to it. Nope, down to. There we go.
All right, thank you. So I have a second question, if you let me.
Please.
There are some sites I noticed that if you just type in your just full legal name, it allows you to search your entire history of even up to the homes you lived in and all your family names and such. Is there a process where you can actually ask these sites to just basically remove all your personal information or not?
Yes, it is. So that's actually what we were just talking about. Delete Me will go to those sites and actually remove them, but at the same time, you can go to those sites yourself and request that information. Now, on some of these sites, they will require you to provide a photo ID indicating that you are that person from that location, and potentially some of the locations that you previously lived in. And so that is that is one of those trade-offs. You got to be cautious about that, because even most of these.
Trust the data broker.
Do you trust the data broker? That's really what it comes down to. But under most circumstances, they will actually remove you once you go through those steps. But it's time versus money of you taking the effort to do that yourself versus paying a service to do it for you. But you can get that information removed.
Additionally, you won't know all the services that have your information, which is why we suggest a service like Delete Me.
Correct.
I have one more, if you mind. So, as you talked about multi-factor authentication, I've seen a lot of them are pushing towards apps on your phone, but if that's a phone you can't carry around and it's lost, stolen, damaged, now you lost access to almost all your accounts. What ways can you circle around for having some kind of physical device you can carry, what doesn't have that kind of, single point of failure?
So almost every account that you set up multi-factor authentication with will give you what's called an emergency PIN. Just about everyone. I don't know of any that don't. If you save and store your emergency PINs in a safe spot, you'll end up like, if you lose your phone or you lose your authentication method, you can use that emergency PIN to get back into your account. You just have to keep that safe.
And there are a few of these that are actually now doing the capability that you can migrate from one. So even if you do lose it, you can recover it onto a different platform, given certain information that you have, either the emergency PIN to, and so some of these sites where you've got two-factor setup will have the emergency PIN so you can remove the two-factor and then reestablish it, or some of the two-factor services themselves will have pins that you can use as recovery pins to gain access back to your list.
I'd like to add on to that thwart itself has a premium subscription service that you can get with them, where you can use them as your two-factor, where you can, instead of scanning the QR code that, like for Google Authenticator or whatever, there's usually an alternative option to get just the token itself, and you can put that in the thwart, and thwart will back it up to either their server or if you're self-hosting it like something like me.
So you can use Bitwarden, their premium tier, also as a two-factor authentication provider and put your stuff in there. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right.
So say that my phone number, my email, something on my computer, I downloaded a virus and it put my information into a botnet, and I just receive infinite amounts of spam, solicitation, phishing links. How do I get out of that? Is it possible?
Oh, that's a good one.
That is a good question. Yeah.
Really good one.
Also,
So
that
I'll-
sounds terrible, and I'm sorry. That
Yeah,
sounds
I'm
really
sorry.
I've received a
bad.
million phone calls a day since 2015. I don't even know how it happened.
So phone spam is the literal worst kind of spam. Like the absolute total worst type of spam.
Absolutely.
The best thing that you can do there, and none of them work very well, to be completely honest, is like spam phone apps. Like I run a couple of them because I've had the same phone number forever, and like I get spam calls constantly because of it. Like your phone number's out there one time and they will call you forever. Email addresses, same with phone numbers. Once it's there, it's there. Like you almost got to migrate to new stuff.
Yeah.
Like as unfortunate and shitty as that is, once it's there, it's there. Like you can't, it's a good lesson, not to like doom and gloom, but like once something is on the internet, it's on the internet. Like there's no getting it back.
Yeah.
So with some of these email services, depending on which ones you use, like if you're using like Google or Yahoo or some of the other major service providers like that, you can report it as spam, and then it will get added into the spam filters, and then the incoming messages will get filtered. So that's one way that you can contribute to try and reduce the spam for everybody else. And over time, because I'm sure you're seeing a lot of the same type of messages coming through, and so that similarity that will get filtered out, and then over time it will actually reduce some, but it's not going to be able to get rid of everything, unfortunately.
You can also set like smart email rules on the email side to like automatically move stuff to
I
spam.
have to do that on some of my
Like
stuff.
as much as you can. Please go ahead, and we're going to go quick. I think we have a little bit of time left, and there's a couple more people who are waiting, so I want to make sure we get them, but please.
So yeah, I noticed that what you're talking about, all of the phone spam, is that they are able to have a different number each time. So they have some process where they can acquire some different numbers, and who is not aware of selling a bunch of numbers to them?
Oh, I could go spin up like 50 numbers right now just through Google.
Yeah.
So easy.
Like Google Voice will give you like as many free numbers as you want. Google Voice will give you like as many free numbers as you want. I could go spin up like 50 to 100 numbers in like a moment.
I was going to impersonate numbers. Where I used to have a Yahoo email where I accidentally gave my email to the Virginia Lottery, and they would not stop sending me emails. I put it in the spam folder, and it just kept coming through. So I deleted my Yahoo, and now I just self-post my email.
Yeah, so deleted their Yahoo, which is what we all want to hear. Honestly, it doesn't matter to me. And they self-host email because they got a whole bunch of spam from the email address. A whole bunch of hands. Do you want to come up and speak, or do you want me to shout for you?
We were just going to say, on the Google Voice, you can't get an unlimited number anymore.
Oh, okay.
One number per email. However, you could have an unlimited number of email.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And then have it's technical, but very.
So Google Voice, you can have one number per email, but you can have an unlimited number of emails.
I believe they changed it to where the email also has to have a phone number associated with it. Like you have to have your cell phone number on your Google account.
Do you have to? Cell phone number on a Google account? No, I don't think so. They want you to, but Google has none of my cell phone numbers.
It is not mandatory.
All right, next down the line. Are you good?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next down the line.
With a lot of the, I guess, issues with TikTok recently, I know that there's even just malicious intent with apps in general. Is there a good repository that lists apps that maybe aren't friendly, scrape a lot of your personal data or messages or activity?
I know it. Oh, I know somebody who does it.
I can't believe I'm pulling a blank on this.
Privacy Guides.
Privacy Guides is one he suggested. You want to say it? So you said Privacy Guides?
Yes, .org.
PrivacyGuides.org. Okay, I'm not familiar with that one, but and I know there's some other ones that are out there, but I'm pulling a blank on them. So we will go with that one at the moment.
Mozilla may also have one.
Yeah, the Chrome extensions are another big one too, and there's a bunch of different companies that, like, if you Google search, you can find, because application malware is becoming more and more common. But you're right, I'm completely like blanking on names of services that I've used in the past. Come on up.
Before he gets into that one, I want to go back to one of the things about the email unsubscribe. If it is a legitimate company, now because of some of the FTC laws, they must provide an unsubscribe link at the bottom of the message that will take you to an unsubscribe page. And if you cannot go to that page to unsubscribe, you can actually file an FTC complaint against them. So that is one option that has recently come out. I don't remember when that one happened, but it is there, and that is a legit thing that must be happening from legitimate businesses.
Yeah, it just only helps with legitimate businesses.
That's right.
Yes. Oh, of course they do.
So, hello. So I guess it's more of a social question. So how do you convince friends, family to be a little bit more self-conscious about their security and their privacy without, telling them, oh, you have to uninstall Windows and get rid of your Google account and your Facebook account and all that? Without having to do all that.
So one way is, like we discussed earlier, you have to give your family members usable security. That means security that's easy for them to understand and to execute. So password managers, easy to understand, easy to execute. So you have to use things like that when you need to explain security to your family members.
The last thing we were all going to do, by the way, like this group was going to come to MAGFest and be like, yo, don't stream. Streaming's bad. People will find out about you. Like it's knowing your audience. Like that plays a big part of it. Were you going to say something, Pinguino?
You can also just handhold your family members into how to lock down your privacy settings in Facebook and Instagram and ask them not to tag you and explain why you don't want to be tagged.
Yeah, and again, it all comes, we've said the word a couple times, talked about it a little bit, threat profile. So don't tell them not to do something, appeal to their threat profile. Yeah. They might not give a shit if they have Facebook or if advertisers have their information. I don't care. I have Facebook, doesn't matter to me. Your family might not either. It's really like, what things matter to them? What things did they want to secure and do they care about? And then help them in that way. And if they don't care about something that you think they should, explain to them why they should care about it. But
just one last point. I often do this with my friends and family. Let's say it's password managers or are doing 2FA or anything. There's always guides, like picture guides, step-by-step, that you can use to educate on how to do these security measures.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Please, hold on. I can come to you. I think that the cord is long enough.
would Delete Me help me with deleting my information from newspapers?
From newspapers?
No.
That's been published years ago.
No.
No.
If it's in print, it's stuck around longer than the internet, but it will disappear eventually because nobody has paper anymore.
Microfiche.
So as we wrap up, I do want to give a huge shout out. If everybody could give a huge shout out to these panels. Some of these folks, it's their first time up on a stage speaking in front of people. And a huge shout out to all the people who engaged and talked and asked questions. Like, I appreciate all of you so much.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Part of this is so we can educate you, and asking the questions helps us convey more information. So thank you all for participating.
And as we actually talk about threat profiles, you'll notice not everybody decided to put socials up there because we all have different threat profiles. But if you do want to follow any of us on the socials, there are the socials that people were willing to share. If you are interested in what Yahoo's security team does, at theparanoids or theparanoids.com. And if you are interested in how to turn your gaming lifestyle or gaming interest into a career in cybersecurity, come back to this room tomorrow at 4, because we're going to be here talking about that. And that one's going to be super duper fun.
Oh, that's going to be great.
Also, I promise there's no slides or anything for that. Like, we're literally just going to have a good time with that one. It's going to be real fun.
It's going to be us telling stories. It'll be fantastic. Yes, sir. You have a question?
More like an add-on.
Yeah, please.
So I'm noticing a lot of digital games now, or if the main publisher is now asking you to create a account from that specific publisher. And now it's becoming widespread for almost every publisher wants their own account for you to play their game online. Is this something that can be eventually becoming a massive privacy issue if all now your information is in all these individual companies?
Yes. The potential is there, absolutely, for that to be a privacy issue, but it also comes down to how they're managing that information and that data.
They want that because they want to be able to send you stuff, and they want to be able to track you, and they want to be able to know when you do stuff and how you do stuff. Because in a free internet, the internet that we have, right, it is mostly free. All of you are the product. Like, that's, you may not be, but that, I guarantee in ways that you might not think of, you probably are.
I don't know, man.
Like, but in a free internet, people are the product. Like, that's how every one of these companies makes money.
So you have a cell phone, right?
I run Palix OS, which is neither Android nor iOS, and runs no proprietary Google block.
But you connect in with a cellular provider, correct?
Yes.
Okay. They have your information. They know where you're going with a lot of that.
Because it's prepaid.
Either way.
That being said, this is a good one for after we close.
Yes, absolutely. I will have this conversation with anyone.
Yeah, we will totally have this conversation.
And I will tell you scary things.
Thank you all so much for coming out and watching this talk. We appreciate you. And have a good rest of the MAGFest.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.